Hey, Greg, that's a pretty amazing background there. I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Hey, Ramon. Yeah. I was asking if you recognize what it's from.
No, I don't recognize where it's from.
It's have you ever read the late '80s run on Animal Man by Grant Morrison and
Nah,
Chaz Trug?
no, I didn't.
It's it's probably one of like really two or three comics that were like super formative
I
for
think
me.
I stopped reading in 1986 and didn't pick it up again until the early 90s. Hi, Tanya. Welcome to the Comic Arts Workshop.
Oh, hi.
Have you been with us before? I think you have, right?
Yeah, I went to, I wouldn't call it a workshop. You had like a little fair at, I think it was NYU.
FIT, at FIT.
FIT, right. Yeah, last year. So I was actually there for a couple of the workshop seminars that you had. But,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I mean, you've seen my name maybe when I've signed up for stuff, but unfortunately, a lot of times I end up having something to do around that time. So this is the first time really that I've been able to be in this forum, like on Zoom with your group.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you finally made
Thank
it.
you.
So this should be an I'm glad you finally made it. This should be an interesting night.
I think so, yes. Thanks.
So let's just wait for more people and for Janice to show up. I forgot to remind her, but she liked the post I did on Facebook, so she knows about it. So hopefully she...
Yeah. Well, I'm sure she'll be here soon. But how have you been?
I've been doing okay. Can't complain. Just going to school and running the workshop. It's been quite interesting. It's a lot of fun. It's Tanya. We have. I also run. Part of this workshop is an actual course that we have, and so we have a group of about 11 people who every week, we have class and we learn a little bit more about making comics.
Oh, okay. So what, it happens after this or?
It's every week, but enrollment is closed right now. It won't open again until January because we have a curriculum that we have to follow.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So I'll talk a little bit about it later, and then if people want to join, they can sign up, and then we'll when we open up their enrollment again in January, we'll let everybody know.
So you're learning how to do sequential art?
Yeah, we're doing everything. Right now we're doing character design, and then 2 weeks ago we were learning about, can't remember anymore, or we were learning about showing, not telling, meaning showing. The idea that you don't tell the readers what's going on, you show the readers what's going on. So things like that. Every week we have a class, and every week we have assignments, and every week we have a critique.
So the end
work.
The objective at the end to have something.
Yes.
A full like graphic novel or comic.
It's up to everybody. Everybody decides for themselves what they want to have at the end of it. So, hi Janice.
Hey Ramon.
Thank you so much for doing this.
I came at 7 o'clock and I was the only participant.
Oh, it's 7:30. I'm sorry.
And then I checked and it's like, what? I'm on for 2 hours? I should have made a dip and dips or something.
How's everything going up there?
Great, we're fine. I mean, it's like you read the news of the wildfires in the West and then the Hurricane Sally down there. It's like, I'm fine.
How's Calvin? Is he doing okay over there?
Yeah, he's doing okay. He's, observing all the precautions about staying inside and,
Yeah, I hear that air quality is pretty bad in LA.
It is. He said, well, he's an optimist. He said, well, in the week, hopefully it'll be better on the weekend.
Hi, Jill. So I'll introduce you, but everybody's names are already on their feed. So let's give it another 5 minutes and then we'll start.
Okay.
Okay.
Is everyone in comics or an artist?
I'm a writer and editor. I don't draw, but still comics.
Greg currently writes for Heidi.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Among other places, I've got an article coming out in a few weeks from Panel by Panel. Just gotta put that out there, you know, little plug.
And he just wrote an article that Nancy Silberkrat. How do you? I don't ever know how to say her name.
So I didn't write an article about her. Back in May, I wrote a article that at the time was actually kind of controversial about basically saying that, like, despite everything going on with like COVID and Diamond at the time was halting orders, you know, comics will survive. And she just last week wrote an open letter to the Beat that they published in response to that article. But I didn't even know that she had responded in that way until it was published. They didn't tell me until after it was published.
Just so you know, Nancy is the co-CEO of Archie Comics.
So Jill, are you an artist or a comic person? Like,
yes, both of those things. I am a writer, but first I'm an illustrator, so I'm definitely comic style. And I put those two together, and I've written 3 graphic novels, and I'm trying to pull them to the finish line so I can present them out there in the world.
Congratulations. I just letter, I don't draw.
Yeah, but that's impressive. Lettering's impressive.
Hey, James, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody.
James.
Hi. Yeah, I'm in video games. I'm a creative director at a mobile gaming company. And I'm just branching out to comics, which I love, and you know, I love this group. I've been attending, and my video is screwed up for a couple of weeks, so this is my this is the first time it worked, so I'm so happy. I saw today's topic, and I was super excited. I mean, lettering in general is awesome. I've had to work with a lot of hand letterers when I was doing a lot of advertising. And now that I'm kind of practicing my own comics, I just have a whole new level of respect and appreciation for letterers in terms of, you know, making it look great and consistent and learning about the language. So I'm super excited about today's session.
Anya, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? We don't usually get to go around like this, so this is a nice privilege today.
I did film, television for undergrad, screenwriting for grad. I'm also I just finished studying UX design, so I have an interest in technology as well. But when I was in Jamaica, I was a part of the committee for animation and also wrote a course for writing animation. And so I do have a deep fascination with anything along those lines, but I realized that I like graphic novels because, one, you know that if you write it, you have a better chance, I think, of getting it published versus writing a screenplay and getting it made. So I thought it was a very practical way to look at it. So I have a deep interest in writing for it. I'm open to artists interpreting the work, but I really would prefer to do the writing. So that's it.
And Josh, let's hear from you.
Hello, I'm Josh. I've been in this group for a while. I'm currently working on a one-shot that I wrote, and I'm working on the penciling, and I'm excited to hear about the lettering because I'm definitely going to need to hire a letterer, and it'd be nice to know what to look for, and yeah, that's pretty much me.
Okay, it's 7:35. I'm sure more people are gonna trickle in, but let's get started.
I sent the link to Calvin. I sent him the Facebook link, but he said he can't get on. So I sent him the document he sent me with the link. So hopefully he can.
Okay, hopefully he can join us. Calvin is Janice's son, who works for DC, and thankfully he still works for DC. So
I know, it's like it's like crossing fingers. But yeah, so he's in the digital department. So basically, that's like a big part of the output for the comics. So the whole department's intact. So we're grateful for that. But you know, all the men and women who work there are really phenomenal. You know, the illustrators, graphic designers, as well as production people. You know, people are multifaceted and talented.
Yeah, I've been dealing with their events director because they are going to be participating. It's not official yet, so don't let them tell anybody. But they are going to be participating with Diversity Comic Con this year.
Great, that's
So,
good news.
So it's nice. They have a book that's coming out that that they really want to plug. So anyway, so I think more people are coming, but let's get started. So welcome to the Comic Arts Workshop. This is the meetup part of the workshop, wherein we once a month we invite a guest to come talk, and we ask questions and they tell us a little bit about the industry and about themselves. We've been doing it since June 2017, and I think Greg has been with us since the very beginning.
I missed the very first meeting, but I went to the second one and have been here since.
And I'm not sure how long Josh has been coming with it, going to this thing. You're muted, Josh.
2018.
2018. So yes, our very first guest I think was Fabrice Sapolsky, and then Heather Antos, and since then we've had like Gina Gagliano, Neil Adams, Ivan Cohen, so a whole bunch of people, Chris Sotomayor, so it's a small community, so I'm sure Janice knows all of them, if not most of them.
The first one I think I know.
Well, what's interesting about Janice is I've known Janice for over 20 years because she was a student of mine at my very first advanced illustrator class at Parsons. So her and her husband came in as students. And at the time, I had retired from comics, so it was. But I was still really fascinated about the fact that Janice worked in comics, and she was in the process of switching from traditional to digital, and she was taking my class to sort of help with that. And she was great at it. So I got to meet, and it was strange because you and Danny both took the class.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we had to commute from upstate. So it was like 2 hours drive one way and 2 hours back. And those classes were like 3 hours, weren't they?
Yeah, it was 3 hours.
Like intense classes, like 5 in a row or something crazy like that. So it's like we'd split the driving. He would get us in the city and then I would get us back home. So we've always worked together that way, raising our son.
I thought Woodstock was 2 hours.
Yeah, so it's like 4 hours, like 2 hours down and then 2 hours back, so that's why I'm not in the city that much,
Was Calvin old enough to be left alone at the time? Because I think he was pretty young still. He must have been like 10 or something.
What year was it?
This would have been 97, 98.
Oh, so he was like high school. So,
was he in high school already?
Yeah, we let him stay at home when he's 9 years old by himself.
Oh, okay. I researched this once. There's really no law that says what age you can leave a child in New York State. So it just depends how mature they are. It's your best judgment.
Yeah, so he was pretty mature, and I knew he knew not to burn the house down. So that was cool, right?
Anyways, let me pull up my questions so we can get started. But I do know what the first question is. So before we start, if you could please give Janice a nice round of applause for coming to join us tonight, even if you might be muted.
Oh, okay. So how I began my career was by mistake. I just stumbled on lettering. My background is in fine arts. And basically, I needed a job to get through college. And my older sister was really good friends with Larry Hama. So she asked Larry if he could, help me out, teach me something. So Larry and Ralph Reese, who were working in Neil Adams' studio, they had rented an office space. They inked together under the name Krusty Bunkers. So both of them showed me like the basic skills to hand letter. So that's how I started. It's like, sometimes I feel like an imposter because you meet all these people at conventions or, at gatherings and they go, oh my God, I love comics since I was a kid. I wanted to do it. It's like, it's so cool. And it's like, It's like, I don't have a story to match that. But whatever I handle with the same passion and discipline because it's my responsibility.
So back then it was hand lettering, right?
Yeah,
Nothing
it was
was
all
digital.
hand lettering. So, you know, my background, fine arts, and dad taught me Chinese calligraphy before I started, you know, kindergarten. So I was like acquainted with, you know, calligraphy. Plus, you know, in school you do all the art projects and you do posters for things, you know. My sisters and my brother and I were always the kids who asked for extra credit. So they'll say, okay, do the poster for the subject for social studies. Like, sure, you know, why not? So, you know, it's a doing that I enjoy, you know, like being part of a team and, you know, coming through on my deadline to get the.
Did you read comics before working for before lettering?
Yeah, you know, my cousins were big comic fans, so they would send us comics that they've read already. So, like, you know, I guess like the Disney comics, like Little Huey and
Baby Huey.
Baby Huey, yeah, stuff like that. You know, and probably Archie books. And then when my brother got a little older, like in sixth grade in the summer, he would get the EC comics, the horror comics, and we would share that. And then he would get GI Joe. I would read that. You know, because basically, you know, being born here, first generation, you read everything and anything English. So you know, it's like whatever's English, it's like the back of a cleanser container. It's like you would read it. So yeah, what else? Yeah,
I'd like to ask you to rattle off the companies that you've worked for, but
oh no,
it might be a shorter list for companies you haven't worked for. So,
probably
but
it's like okay.
I think you've worked for all of them. I think at some point, right?
Yeah, well, IDW, I never officially worked for except when I volunteered to letter for some stories for the Pulse collection and the fundraiser for Las Vegas, where we live. So that way I worked with them, but they didn't pay me.
Oh, okay.
So we talk about paying or non-paying work. You let me know.
But you've worked for both Marvel and DC?
Yeah, well, Marvel, I actually began in 1974 in the bullpen. And then you know, it's like, this is what I tell every time I do a presentation. You know, when I showed up in the comic industry, you know, the women's movement was going on for a while. So I come in here and it's like, did they not read the news? You know, what? It was a, you know, very male dominated culture. And, you know, women's roles, you know, there weren't too many women in the industry. So, you know, the way artists viewed women was like either they were the muse or like a grunt worker for them. So it's like, I don't, you know, I didn't feel I could grow in there, you know, in what I was looking for. But actually, it goes more to like my identity as a hybrid American and Asian American. So, you know, it's like when you come to this country, you know, my parents came, you know, the whole drive is assimilation so that you get a foothold in the mainstream culture. So by the time we reached like high school and college, the search for identity intensifies because you have that freedom when you go to college. You know, nobody's watching. You decide the course of study and such. So it was actually my older sister, Faye Chiang, who started becoming involved when she went to Hunter with the anti-war movement. Because, you know, anti-war movement for Vietnam. And it was because they were killing people that looked like us. You know, so my sister got involved with the organizing third world studies, you know, having Asian American study courses as part of the curriculum. So, you know, from that was a whole movement into the community to organizing community. So being she was our older sister, all of us followed like ducks sort of, but we all had the same questions about identity. So I was really fortunate because she would bring books in the house written by Black Panthers, you know, like Soul on Ice and such, you know, autobiography of Malcolm X. And she had a bookshelf that I would just go and pull books and read. So my politicization began very young because of the exposure. And you know, it was a period of time also, I was horrified when they killed Fred Hampton and his wife in their bed. Like the way they killed Breonna Taylor, they just shot him while they were sleeping. So, you know, the real news and, you know, watching footage from the war every night, how could you not have your eyes open unless you want to be an ostrich? So when I went into comics, the bigger drive for me the personal identity, you know, trying to find a community of people that look like me. Because at that time, you know, when my parents, when my dad immigrated, he came as a paper son. And that meant in, I think it was 1882, they passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. So the only way you can come in this country is if a relative who came before that Exclusion Act would sponsor you. So that's how they did it. You know, within a village, they would sponsor relatives to come in. So that's how my dad came in. But my mother came in as a war bride because of if you know if your dad served in the war, then he could bring a bride from China. So talk about timing. My parents got married, and then they went to Hong Kong for the honeymoon. And 2 weeks later, the communists took over China. So my mother could not go back. So they just went forward. They came to America. So yeah, it was interesting. The time, my childhood was during the Cold War also. So, you know, my parents would say, well, you know, you should stay low, not make waves, because they still have the, it was like, you see what they did to the Japanese? Do you think they'll think twice about throwing Chinese in the camps? It's like, yeah, that's true, you know, in terms of the racism in the government. So, you know, we were like model students, you know, and we just focused on art and our studies. But once we went to college, you know, all bets are off. You know, it's like...
there weren't a lot of Asians in the industry when you started, right? Larry and you, and there was a Japanese guy, I can't remember his name.
It was Mori Kuramoto and
yeah, Mori, yeah.
Irving Watanabe. And there was a letterer in DC that, God, was Ben Oda.
Were you already working in the industry when all the Filipino artists started coming in?
When I came back in the 80s, I saw more people.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but anyway, yeah, there was no other Chinese woman there.
Did you have a mentor in the industry or at Marvel who looked out for you and sort of like took you under their wing?
Yeah, well, you know, my original mentors are, you know, Larry Hama and Ralph Reese. And then I went to, then Neil Adams got me an introduction to Marvel. So Danny Crespi was the head of the bullpen at that time. So I was basically on staff doing lettering corrections and, you know, trying to get my skills up in terms of being a hand letterer. It's like, when I came back to the industry in 1980, the first job was on John Buscema, Conan the Barbarian. So I looked at the pencils and I was like, oh my God, this guy draws like a Renaissance artist and they want me to letter over it. So I penciled all the letters and then I inked it. So it ended up like 2 hours a page and I was like, this is not going to fly. But anyway, so with Danny, you know, I learned production values, how to do the lettering corrections, and learned more by watching also. One time I was like ready to go out to lunch and then Danny was talking on the phone and working. A lot of guys can do that. So he's working on this logo and I was watching him as he was like bringing the Pro White to like clean it up and stuff. And in front of me, I saw it transform. So I saw him go at it until he was satisfied. So the lesson I learned there was like, you know, you just keep hitting at it until you feel you reached it. You know, you don't like do quickly and move it along until you're satisfied. You're not gonna.
What was the logo for?
What?
What was the logo for?
It was cover copy. It was Assassin something, and actually Todd Klein found it one time when he was posting on Facebook. And then I said, God, I recognize that. I was on the elbow, Danny's elbow when he was cleaning it. So, you know, it's like being in that work environment, you pick up a lot just by being there, you know, watching and hearing, you know. That's why I came to your class, because I thought I would learn from other people's questions, you know, about the program. So, you know, I learned that at Danny Crespi's elbow. And then, you know, everyone was supportive. Marie Severin was there, Flo Steinberg, you know, Mori Kuramoto, Jack Abel, a lot of the old timers, you know, Stan Lee's original bullpen were there. And Maury was really kind. He goes, It'll take you 3 years to, evolve your style, your hand lettering style. It actually took me 10 years, to like get to the point where people can recognize my style, which is very calligraphic. The way I put my pen down is like when you use a Chinese brush for calligraphy, first you touch a surface, to make contact, and then you drag. So there was a time when people were trying to do different style fonts and stuff. And it's like, okay, I don't have to like imitate somebody I, really admired. I really admired Joe Rosen's, hand lettering. So that's another thing we tell people when they hand letter. It's like, I was told like, well, look at the different styles that people have, and the one you really feel comfortable with, try to imitate it. I don't think that's true with digital lettering unless you're going to create your own font. That's not going to happen.
Are you still hand lettering?
I was hand lettering the Spider-Man daily strips and the Sunday page for about, let me see, like 7 years. So right now I'm not hand lettering a project per se, but I can, I have the ability to hand letter.
Now, did that stop after Joe and Stan passed away, or was it stopped before then?
It was when Stan passed away. What happened, they moved the strip over to Marvel Manhattan's office, and we worked on it until like into March, I think, the year after Stan passed away. Because, yeah. And then Joe Sinner was always doing commissions and stuff. He was always busy, so. But the hand lettering, yeah, that was it. Actually, I found the last tag. They asked me to write Excelsior. So I wrote it like 3 times to see what size they needed. So I have it. Yesterday I found it. I said, oh, look, that's from the last Spider-Man strip I have. So anyway.
How would you describe as the most important job that a letterer has?
It's we create the silent soundtrack. And the most important part is to make sure the story is read correctly and not disrupt the visual storytelling. So, it can be a struggle when the script is like really word heavy or if the art is dense. So, it's like when we used to hand letter right on the board, there wasn't a lot of, space for mistake because once it becomes part of the art, that's pretty much it. When pages were late, the inkers would ink and the letterers would letter on vellum, which is like a heavy weight tracing paper. And then we'd go in production where they put like snowflake in the back, white it out. And then they would cut it and they would paste it in place. That's sort of like, I guess, digital lettering because it's on a layer and you can move it, when there's editing. But
you could only do that if you actually had copies of the pencils, right?
Yeah, I would get a Xerox of the pencils, and then I would put the vellum on top, and then But there was one job. There was no art. It was so late. It was an older artist. I think it was his last job. And he just lost heart, right? He just like penciled panels. And then Louise Simonson said to me, just letter the best you can, figure the art directions. And then Alan Kupperberg came in and filled in the art. So that was interesting. And then, the G.I. Joe silent issue, I lettered that. And by lettering, the story behind that is Larry said the book was really late. And he said to everyone, it's like, well, I have an idea. We should do like a storyboard, minimal lettering, but get the art done. So basically, it was like a title. It was like Stanley Presents. We always hand letter that, Stanley Presents. Then the title, and then there was a caption to, place the situation, and then the credit line. And the last page was the end, I think. But I did rule the panel borders.
Did you get your usual page rate for that?
Yeah.
Even though the most of the pages had no lettering in it.
Yeah, but I had gotten, everyone teases me about that, right? So when IDW was doing collection of the G.I. Joe books, whoever the editor coordinating wrote me an email and goes, ha ha ha, you got paid for not lettering there. And then I refused to answer. And so finally the guy wrote and said, can you answer back? You know, we have to get this collection ready for San Diego Comic-Con. So I called Larry and said, who's this Joker? And then he said, oh, it's so-and-so. I said, okay. So I wrote back and said, you know, I said, this is how you should phrase your introduction of my participation in lettering books is like seasoned professional Janice Chiang, you know, letter this. Because what it is, we have no control over editorial content. You know, it's like paying dues is getting a late job with 32 balloons, handwritten on tracing paper that you have to letter overnight. And, you know, this one story, I had to do it because it was written by the editor-in-chief. And it was the last time I could have seen my grand aunt. And I'd never seen her, you know, because she passed away. And I couldn't go to the family dinner because I was meeting my deadline. So, you know, those are sacrifices we make. And my family sacrificed a lot to let me be in the industry because a lot of times like, you know, I got to stay home or you have to stay home with me. It's like, so, yeah, you know, it's like, well, you know, if we get a free job, so it goes. And we just get just as heavy jobs too. You know, it continues in digital lettering too. I had this one project, we went through 8 stages of correction. It's like, can't you make up your mind what you want to say? You know, it's like, come on. So, okay.
You know, I like to, whenever I'm at a Comic-Con and I see dollar bins, I always look for those old Charlton comics.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not sure if it was just Charlton or other comics of that period, but you would see a lot of really bad word balloon placements and the way the lettering is stacked. And I guess that doesn't happen anymore because with digital, it's so much easier to make corrections, right?
Well, you know, it's like if the art is dense, you know, there's a lot of times I see poor placement of balloons. You know, it's like, I know how difficult and hardworking the artists are. So, you know, every time I letter something, it's like, you know, I don't want to cover this because this part is telling the story, you know. So, yeah, you know, there's no guarantees. You know, actually, you know, I was listening to a presentation by Carl Potts. So he said, well, you know, it's better now versus hand lettering that all the balloons are floating. And I don't particularly agree with that. He said, well, if they're floating, it doesn't disrupt the art. Yes, it does. It was covering somebody's head or, you know, a pointer's going the wrong way. You know, what's difficult is like, you know, when I approach whatever story I'm lettering, I read the art directions first. And then I look to see if actually, you know, the artist is following it. When they flip it, that's really tricky because, you know, Western lettering goes from left to right. So it's like, there's a lot of problem solving that goes on to make it flow correctly. That the correct person is speaking in the correct sequence, you know, to the story.
Do you have to do those? Is that part of your job to flip the panels or to move the art down a little bit to make room for the balloons?
No, I'm saying I don't touch the art at all. You know, my only responsibility is lettering. But if the artist decides to change the composition and flip the character's position, it's like, oh no, I'm going to do this without like breaking the flow. So that's like the respect that I feel letters should have for the visual art. You know, there's two things going on here. So, you know, I try to like, the main thing is, my view is like preserve the art. And then the lettering flows with that, with the storytelling. Yeah.
Who are some of the more memorable creators that you've worked with?
It's like I've worked with so many people. Well, Larry, number one. You know, I got to work with him on so many things. You know, he was my editor and the writer. Actually, we're working together on this graphic novel drawn by Mark Bright and written by Larry. So I'm lettering that.
Did you ever do any? Did you ever get to letter any pages from like Jack Kirby or?
I almost did. So anyway, when I started working with Joan Sinnott, he said to me, "Oh, I have a recreation of Fantastic Four number 50 or some famous cover." And he said, as a favor, I asked Jack Kirby to draw it for me, you know, instead of paying me for something he did for him. So he gives me the page and he asked me to letter. It was like, you know, the title letter and everything. So it was like a little daunting. But I told my friend Jack Morelli about it, right? So he said, don't touch it. There's no original pencils from Jack Kirby anywhere. Because, you know, in the process, you know, of comic making, you have the penciler, then you inker, then you erase all the pencil lines. So Jack said, don't do it. So I said to Joe, I think it's more valuable if we don't touch it. And then Joe said, it was a little hurt, said, they don't want me to ink this? I said, no, I think it's more valuable because if you think about it, because that's true, you know. Every time we get pages from Jack, he'd write me little notes and stuff, but I had to erase it before I handed in for, you know, publication. So yeah, thank you, Jack Morelli, for averting a catastrophe. But I did hold it, if you want that much. What other pencilers do you think I might have lettered over? Well, John Buscema, he was incredible.
Sure, yeah.
Because on the other side, he'd be doing his warm-ups, and it was like, oh my goodness. Just like, that was amazing to see that.
But you usually got the pages when they were still pencils, right? Or were they, or is it could go either way?
Well, the majority, I would say 95% was original art that I got.
And then after your lettering was in, then they would ink it, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, you know, God, let's see, what I was on. I was like, Mark Bright, we worked on, Bill Sienkiewicz, when he started, I lettered his first series, Moon Knight. Ron Lim, I worked with him on Silver Surfer. You name it, I think I've lettered over them. You know, it's really cool. It's like when I meet people who say to me, oh my God, you lettered my first professional job. And they're so happy to meet me, which is nice. You know, it's like, you know, you find a lot of people who come in the industry really love comics when they were young. Loved it so much that they wanted to be part of the industry. And I think that's really rewarding that our team's work, you know, influenced so many future artists and writers, you know, to join us. So I'm really happy when I meet them at conventions. So it's a good thing.
Now, when you were lettering back in Marvel, most of the lettering was done in-house, correct?
No, in my house?
No, in-house at Marvel, at the Marvel bullpen. Most of the lettering back then was done.
And originally, you know, when Stan had his bullpen, you know, people, they would churn out like 4 or 5 comics a day, which is like pretty incredible.
But that also means that you weren't actually working side by side with the artists who were usually just sending or dropping off artwork.
Yeah, you know, so it was all freelance. Everybody was at home, you know, either dropping the work off or sending it in. In my case, I would go in, when I lived in New Jersey, I was closer to Manhattan. So I would come in three times a week, you know, pick up work, drop off work. You know, people would say I ran through so quickly. Well, you know, that's the way it goes.
What are some of the surprising differences between working in the industry when you first started and working in the industry now?
There's more women now, for sure. And I think a lot had to do with manga books becoming popular and then, you know, cosplay and stuff. So that's a big difference.
Which is ironic because I don't think there are a lot of manga women creators, right? Or are there?
I don't know. I don't follow manga very closely, but just in terms of like convention attendance, you know, when they would have the regular Comic-Con and then they would have the Anime Fest and Manga Fest, side by side. So that's a big difference. I think because of the internet, the pool of artists is more international. I mean, when we at Marvel, we would get. I know when I worked with Disney on like Chip and Dale books, which I found I forgot Len Wein had edited, but his wife reminded me, of it. And I said, oh yeah, that's right. We worked on Chip and Dale. That studio was in Argentina. And then we had a group of Philippine artists working with us. And then was Ernie Chan from Puerto Rico?
I thought he was Filipino.
There was an old-time artist from Puerto Rico. So, with the internet, it's like, it's global in terms of.
I remember you telling me years ago that that social media allowed you guys to stay in touch more, because before social media, everybody worked in isolation.
That's true, unless you were one of the guys with a telephone receiver in the crook of your neck, chatting while you work. It was like pretty much in isolation, unless you ran in the office or went to a convention. That was it. So, what's great about Facebook is, you know what your friends are up to, and then when you actually see them, you don't have to like backtrack from the last time you saw them. It's like you're up to date with them.
It's been so much fun that we're already at the halfway point, so I'm going to open it up to questions from the
really?
audience.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
we haven't even gotten through our questions yet, but I'll open up to the audience because I want people to be able to ask their own questions. So, anybody?
Hi, Janice. It's me, Edwin.
Oh, hi. How are you doing?
How you doing? Pretty good. I have a question. So, I'm working on a comic with an artist, and I hired a letterer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, usually, because I know you were talking about during the pencil stage is when they give it to you to letter, or is it like after he does the coloring and everything like that? Do they do the lettering after?
Well, are you doing digital lettering or hand lettering?
It's gonna be digital lettering.
Okay, so as long as you have I've lettered over thumbnails. If something's late or if I want to get a jump because if you're doing a bunch of different books, I try to basically bring everything at the most advanced stage as possible, because that way,
Right.
Changing out files doesn't take a lot of time. So if you want your letterer to start, lettering, they could do it over your pencils, your inks, or your thumbnails. If they, the thing is, the most important thing is make sure the template is correct to what you want the printer to print. So your the files give to the letter, make sure it's scaled to the template. That's where the most problem is. If somebody gives me a lot of the traditional artists are using the 11 by 17 artboards, but a template is specific to the printer. So every printer has a different size. So a lot of the old timers, the guys think, well, if I make art big enough, it's like a cookie cutter. Somehow the template cuts it. But if you don't draw to the scale of the template, you can cut some important information, like have somebody's face, which I think is lazy. So the technical part is make sure the pages are scaled correctly to the template before you give it to the letterer. Because a lot of time I have to do pushback or I figure it out myself. But basically, if you have consistency through the whole process, then when you print it, you'll get what you see. Because it's like everything looks great on screen, but when it's printed a 3D book, the mistakes can be a mistake.
So I should tell my artist what's the when you, because he sends it to me to Gmail.
Okay.
So I should tell him, hey, what's the size of this this photo? Because when I bring it to the letter, I want him to know exactly, so I can, when I do go to the printing phase, I would know.
If you have Photoshop, you go over the image and see the image size and stuff. But
Okay.
but what you need is give the letter the template that you're gonna need, that the printer will print from. And the best.
Edwin, do you know who your printer is, or where you're printing it?
Like my printer, like exactly what printer I'm printing.
Do you know who your printer is, or because if you can get the template from them,
you should
have your artist draw it to that size, then that'll
Okay.
simplify
Or
your
in proportion to that size, you
Yeah,
know?
in proportion to that size, yeah.
Okay, because I might be using Morris Publishing, so I might be printing with them.
Yeah, so give them a call and ask them, do they have a template for your artists and to use in the letter? Because that way,
Okay.
Ramon knows a lot about production values. But from my
Okay.
experience, it's like when I see something like 3 times too big for my template, it's like, no, don't do this.
Anybody
Thank
else have
you.
any other questions? Thanks, Edwin.
I do, actually.
Go for it, Greg.
So I really love Superman Smashes the Klan, which you lettered. And something that I'm really curious about with your process on that book, and really any kind of like kids comics that you might have done in the past, like what kind of considerations do you make when you know it's being read by children rather than adults? Like, do you do things to make the text more prominent or bigger word balloons? I'm just so curious about kind of how that might change your process.
Well, definitely with young adult and children's book, the font will be bigger, because they're learning how to read. With Superman Smashes the Klan, I think the size was pretty much like what the scale I use for a DC book. It's, whether it's like an adult or young adult book that I'm lettering, it's like the storytelling. How do the lettering elements facilitate the storytelling? So it's really not that different because it's the same quality you have to bring, in terms of sound effects and stuff. So what was fun about Superman Smashes the Klan, the sound effects, because the look was retro. I was allowed to do a lot of like retro kind of sound effects, which is like really close to hand lettering. So I was happy about that because all the fonts I used with the sound effects are from my design. So I was really comfortable with it.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that reading it, that, because it takes place kind of in like the immediate post-World War II, that it had a little bit of an old school feel to the letters.
So yeah, so it was a lot of, Gene and I worked before on The Shadow Hero with Sunny Liu. So it was basically a story about an Asian American superhero. It's like really funny book, but that's how I started working with Gene and then with Sunny, because I had gone to San Diego Comic-Con 2009. That was the first time I was there, and I met Sunny and Gene at a signing. They had worked on this anthology called Secret Identities. So a lot of this is answer your question, Ramon. There were enough professional Asian American artists and writers to put that anthology together.
That was Jeff Yang's book, right?
Yeah. So that's where I met Bernard Chiang, Cliff Chiang, So actually I brought the book, Benton Jew, I brought the book, looked at the biographies, went up and down Artist Alley to see if I could find them, right? So they had a signing at Jerry Ma's table, and I saw them there. So, that's how our collaboration began. So, and then we did a Panda Express for Asian Pacific Cultural Month. We did a little mini comic continuing the ventures of the Shadow Hero.
Love the Shadow Hero. Questions? Anybody else?
I have a question. Yes. So speaking of sound effects, do you get free reign in how the sound effects and like the onomatopoeia and stuff like that looks? Because in comics they can vary. Some of them have balloons, some of them have these crazy shadow effects or fonts and curves and stuff like that. So you get to make all the decisions as a letterer, or is that like a collab between the penciler or so? How does that work?
Well, when we hand lettered, they would block out where they want the sound effect, which because it was part of the art. Now also, sometimes when I get balloon placements, they'll indicate where they would like it. But you know, I'm the lettering department for John and Sandy King Carpenter's Storm King Comics, so I have total free reign there. What I do, you know, sound effects. If you're familiar with Illustrator, I go in the distort window, and I distort every letter form I use. So that way it can be organic. I'm literally moving, you know, or angling, skewing. I do a lot of distortion because, you know, coming from hand lettering, I want it organic. I just don't want a sound effect font that I buy that goes up and down and says whatever. To me, you know, that I guess is foreign to me, but, you know, that's a really popular style, you know, in the comic aesthetics at this point, but I'm I'm one of the holdouts. You know, it's like I'm trying to understand digital lettering, the aesthetics of it more so than like I'm churning out a house look. You know, so yeah, I get in conflict. I know people want it looking like everything else, but it's hard for me to do that. But if you have Comixology, go and check out our Storm King comics. We have quite a few graphic novels. And actually this year is our 6th year of the John Carpenter's Tales for Halloween Night, which is basically 12 stories from 12 different teams, you know, dealing with horror on Halloween. So John always writes the first story and Sandy writes the ending story, the book ending it. So there's a lot of fun stuff, you know. I get to really be part of that.
We have a question from Irish.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not too sure how to change my name on there. I got something on the sketching board, which is essentially I'm rewriting folklore from the perspective of some of the women in the story, because if you take their perspective on, say, like Helen of Troy's perspective on the Greek and Trojan War, Medea's perspective on Jason and the Argonauts, or Medusa's perspective on the founding of Athens, it becomes a drastically different story. I want to know if there were any ways that you would recommend to try to network with women that write in the industry that, I don't know, might be interested in a project similar to that.
You can tweet. Yeah, you know, it's like everyone's, you know, Twitter, I'm not that great on. I always retweet a comment because you can't correct it if you misspell something. So I know, and people are tweeting away like, "Give me work. I want to do this book for this company." It's like, good luck. But sometimes, you know, actually, you know, people respond. So I think if you tweet about it, there's like women writers, comic writers out there with Twitter accounts for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm actually, it's funny that you mentioned the Chinese Exclusion Act. Up until a few months ago, I was defending immigrants in court. I was an immigration attorney, still technically am.
You're doing great work. It's like.
Were you based out of Irish?
Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was working over at freaking Federal Plaza over in Lower Manhattan.
Oh yeah. Do you Do you know Eiling Poon? She's a immigration attorney in Chinatown.
Interesting. Well, it's a relatively small community, but I was only doing it for about 2 years.
Oh, okay. She's been doing it for quite a long time.
Does anybody else have any other questions? James?
Hi, Jen. Oh, sorry.
You go.
Can it happen? Okay, cool. So you talked about like preserving the story. Are there ever any times where it's like you have an impulse to preserve the art over making the best narrative experience? And have you ever followed that impulse?
Have I overridden that?
Yeah.
Looking back, I think, you know, the Morbius series I lettered for Marvel, I think my sound effects were too big. If you mean by that. And that was like in the 90s, I think. And I think it was like I think it was the pressure of being the only woman letterer. You know, it's like, yeah, you're gonna look at my sound effects. You know, I designed the Ghost Rider balloon because the stakes, you know, at that time the stakes were, you know, going up. You know, I would come into work, you know, to deliver pages, and then somebody said, "Oh, look what this guy did with his balloon shapes," and it's like, "Oh yeah, we can design different fonts and balloon shapes." All bets are off. It's like, I'm coming. So the thing with the Ghost Rider was so funny. It was like, why are people standing there? This guy has a skull, his head's on fire. I'd run the fuck out of there, right? Excuse me. And then one day I was exercising in the gym. I said, fire, that's what his balloon needs, right? Because you can see the balloon and know he's speaking without reading it. So I remember Bobby Chase told me years later, she said, when I saw those pages with the new Ghost Rider balloon, I called Howard Mackey. He said, oh my God, you should see what Janice did. And I'm proud to say, you know, I forgot what issue. We sold 800,000 copies. I forgot what issue, Howard would know probably. But, you know, it was so much fun because, you know, Mark Texera was the original artist. And I was just like wowed by his pencils. You know, he's another like really super fine artist. And, you know, I felt like I had to meet the challenge of like something qualitative just as good. So yeah, you know, that's the first thing I say to people. Yeah, I did the Ghost Rider balloon. Yeah.
Jill, you had a question?
Jill? Oh yeah, sorry, I'm so transfixed. I forgot what I was going to ask. Okay, it's a little bit of a story, and I'm not sure what the question is, but maybe you'll tell me what it is. So I worked in selling original art in a gallery for years, a place called Illustration House down in Manhattan. And we met Walt Simonson and Louise and, you know, a lot of really cool people, Jim Steranko, great people, right? And we were handling a lot of original art. We'd have, you know, Little Nemo in Slumberland, the originals, Harriman, Crazy Cat, all this stuff, right?
Amazing.
It was like going to grad school, and I didn't even really know what I was handling, but we had thousands of pieces of art from paintings down to these things. And you look at, some of them had been redone and rubber cemented, and, you know, sometimes the son of the artist would redo Little Nemo. This happened a lot, redo the captions and do his own versions, and they were terrible. And so anyway, I'm deeply steeped in the original art, right? So I'm just getting into graphic novels and comics, finally returning to think what I wanted to do all my life. So I started to, you know, grab type, thinking, well, I got to do it. I've got to grab fonts. Fonts are fun. I'm going to just store it. I'm going to do all that fun stuff with it. And a friend of mine, Henrik Drescher, great illustrator, he kind of ripped me a new one. He's like, you got to put your handwriting in there. Get rid of this type. What are you thinking? So now I'm really confused. Like, I think it's going to take me the rest of my life to do like one graphic novel.
But, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's like all bets are off. There's no wrong or right way to do it. You know, hand lettering is very organic to the art. So, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, it's the personality of the person. It's like, for me, it's like what the need is. You know, it's like digital lettering because of the, you know, publishing process. Hand lettering, if, you know, because Stanley really wanted the hand lettering kept on the strips. I think it really pleased him to see it. That's why he kept our team going. So, you know, it's like you always hire a letterer to, you know, buy you time. If not, you know, like handle everything yourself. Yeah. You know, so if you have legible handwriting, I don't see what's wrong with that, right? Because it's yours. It gives it a, you know, it gives it, you know, hand lettering is unique to the person. What I'm most proud about my time with hand lettering is like people can recognize my style right away. And that's very difficult to do. So, you know, I tell people as an achievement, I know that much of, you know, God, it's like going on 40 something years in the industry. You know, I'm known for that. People can see it without my name and know it's me. So it has its own energy and personality, hand lettering.
Did you get the credit you deserved all the way along? Did you ever have to fight for it?
You know, it's like, well, the credit, we get credit on the credit line when we did books. And then sometimes, sometimes when we had late books, the credit went to many hands because we had to, you know, break out the pages and do it and bring it back. Yeah, I would think so, you know, because there was a time I wasn't working when I went to Ramon's class. You know, DC and Marvel created their own lettering departments. So a lot of hand letters who didn't transition to digital lettering had no work. So yeah, Google put all my printed credits together. So they rewarded me greatly. So, you know, when I was fighting back to get digital work, I was like, yeah, I've lettered books. You see my database? So yeah, you know, and you know, I've been honored a couple of times at different, you know, like comic fan polls, or comicbook.com chose me as a best letter 2016 because they said she can handle, you know, horror with John Carpenter and Sandy King Carpenter's line to DC superhero girls. So, you know, you got it, I can letter it. So yeah, I think I've been amply rewarded. And, you know, it's like we're in a community that's like really, you know, comic is really difficult in terms of the deadlines. If you're pursuing printing deadlines, everything else goes out the window. You know, it's like, you know, during the pandemic, I haven't been sleeping well, you know, because, you know, usually my husband and I go train in the gym just so I could sit still. So, you know, during the pandemic, I've been waking up like, just like taking long naps, like 3 hours. I'm awake and I'm ready to work, you know, which is crazy. But during really tough deadlines, that is my schedule. You know, it's like, there's days I know I shouldn't drive. One time we had such a tight deadline, right? So I'm making coffee to stay awake. And I go to the microwave and put another cup. I said, whose cup is this? So I knew I was like tired in the physical world, but you know, in terms of the focus to do the work, I was on.
And that's the reason why it took so long to get Janice to come to be a guest speaker, because she never had time to come down to the city and be a guest speaker. But now that we're doing everything online, she's able to do it. So let's take two more questions from James and from Greg. So let's go with Greg first. Unmute yourself, Greg.
Yeah. What's your, how you doing? What's your biggest pet peeves that an artist would do? Like, what should an artist avoid doing when that would make your job more difficult?
Well, when they don't leave enough airspace to consider the lettering. When we hand lettered, the writer usually did the balloon placement. Sometimes, you know, it was like really tight, where it's, you know, it's like where it was placed, it looked like the person was a hunchback. So, you know, we try to really squeeze the lettering to fit. So I was known for like tight lettering, for good or bad, but we're able to get it in. I don't know, it's like the artist is doing the storytelling, you know, we come after. So I never heard where a letter dictated to an artist what to do. That's not the pecking order in how we create. And, you know, the tricky thing is, you know, the lettering, you're not supposed to notice. It's not supposed to stop the flow. So that's like an oxymoron. You know, it's like we're a silent soundtrack to the story. And the good lettering, you're not supposed to see. So it's like, yeah, we're invisible on many levels except for what you read. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
James?
Hey, Janice. I was not expecting to be talking to Fei Chang's sister today, because I knew Fei Chang and Xian from Project Reach. This was like a decade ago, and like your mannerisms, I feel like I'm looking at a doppelganger, and your laugh.
People say I sound like her too.
Yeah. You've been doing this for a long time, and what are aspects of your career or job, like the day-to-day, the technical processes, or like the processes with different people? Like, do you find like joyous doing this, like over time?
Yeah, it's like whenever you take a project, whenever I commit to a project, I commit to a team. So my main responsibility is not to let them down. Like I have to meet my deadline on time or earlier. So I find what I do, you know, people who work on staff, their weekend is like Saturday or Sunday. But I notice like I start my week, I take my weekend Friday to Saturday. So I'll have my work completed on Sunday before Monday. So yeah, that's the main thing. You know, I really enjoy being part of a team, and that's my main responsibility. But, you know, I deal with a lot of different clients. And, you know, what I tell freelancers or people beginning in industries, like, you have to hear what the client needs, not so much like what you want to give the client. So there's different levels of collaborative process. It's like when I work with DC, it's pretty structured in terms of the job definition. So, you know, my lettering supervisor will, you know, contact me about a project that, you know, an editor or the writer requests me to work on. And then, you know, the editor will get me the, you know, full script and the balloon placements, and my lettering supervisor will, you know, set up all the files for me. But then I'll get clients who have no experience making a comic. Looks like it's really easy. It's like, oh no. It's like, there's been situations where I had no safety net but myself, where I had to edit and, you know, all the other things. So that's why I was struggling about template being the most crucial part before you start. Because I know what can happen when there isn't one. So luckily I've never let anything go past my hands to the point where it's printed and it's totally unusable. You know, so but you know what's great about my job is I get to work on so many storylines. You know, it's like with John Carpenter's storyline, we have Tales of Science Fiction. So I get to do space travel, time travel. So you know, it's like every project I take, there's something exciting. You know, there's always like, you know, because the stakes are up in terms of beautiful art. It's like I'm spoiled. I get to see all this phenomenal art before it goes public, you know? So that's like a really plus to the job. Any other question or?
Let's do one last question. And the question is, what advice can you give to somebody who wants to get into the industry?
The industry is pretty broad now. You know, it's like, I remember it was like, in the beginning, it was very traditional. Certain comic houses like Archie, DC, Marvel, Dark Horse. It was like you would try. I still advise like young people, if you can work in like DC or Marvel, IDW, Dark Horse, some large company, that's always a good start because you could be a fly on the wall. You could be the gopher, but you can see everything and you can have access to people. The thing that I realized with the internet in 2000, the whole thing of web comics, people made their presence that way. You know, the social media, you can go out that, you know, we're really missing out conventions, you know, in terms of the one-to-one contact. Because I saw a question you had, like, do I still have to hustle? Yes, I do. You know, it's like, even after all these years, you know, there's always, like in big companies, there's always a change in the editorial pool, you know, in terms of like people you have working relationships with over years, all of a sudden they're gone. Either they're in this climate laid off or they go to another job. So, you know, as a freelancer, you learn to throw out your own stepping stones, you know, before you fall. It's sort of like Super Mario game. It's like jumping from platform to platform, trying to get the stars or whatever. So, you know, the first thing is also see what's out there. And that way you can get an understanding, like what are people's interests and storylines and the quality that's expected of what you put out. You know, that's an important part of, you know, publication, the quality and the standards. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna have an article with Comics Creators, you know, the magazine that John B. Cook puts out. So I had to write a bunch of answers for the interview. So one thing in terms of quality, everything's digital and everything's like, you can magnify it so much. So, you know, you can't flub coloring. You can't flub anything. So, you know, you have to have that discipline to put it out there also, you know, on a professional level. I know the smaller comic gatherings, the Mocha Fest. So, you know, and the other thing is like find a mentor. That helps a lot, doesn't it? Because they have a network already. Um, you know, it's like right now, it's like, yeah, this too is accessible where you can write and draw your own graphic novel. But if it works easier, not easier, if it's more streamlined, that you get a team of collaborators, you know, who are specific to, you know, drawing or the writing or the lettering, you know, that's helpful too. Because sometimes, you know, it's like when I worked with Del Rey doing manga work, they gave us compressed art files with the Japanese sound effects. So our job was to clean the files, and they would have zipper tone on every angle and every density. So I would have to make sheets specific to that book of, you know, the zip tone patterns. And what I learned in manga in Japan, they have teams of people doing every aspect. Like there's only, you know, there's a team for textures, a team for inking, and that's how they can get it out. So, you know, when I was doing it, it's like, oh, so that's who I'm fighting, an army of 50. But, you know, collaboration is always good, you know, because the feedback from other people will help you understand if you're telling the story clearly, whether it's in the art or the writing. Um, Sometimes the art by itself says more than what words can describe. That's the thing about, I feel, a successful balance is that the writer has to trust the artist to do the storytelling more so than by the weight of words. So if you're doing your own book, you know, it's like this, you know, you have to let air in there. So, you know, when people were just doing art without the balloons, like the hand art, when it started going digital, I felt something was lost not having the balloons there, the white space. It gave you a breather, you know, in terms of your eye jumping from here to there. When it's like straight, dense art, it's like, I remember friends were selling it, and it's like, it's out of context. You don't know where it belongs. It's like, okay, it looks really great, but where does it belong? Unless you open a comic or print a comic of where it showed up. But that's just the changes I noticed. But
Well, thank you very much, Janice. I don't want to keep you any longer, but thank you very much for coming to talk to these guys, to us. If you could please give her a nice round of applause and appreciation.
Thank you.
Not
Thank you
just for
for having
coming,
me.
but for all the work you've been putting out over the years. You know, it's funny because like I find some of my old books and it's, oh, Janice lettered that. I see the credits, not even realizing, because obviously I was reading them before I knew you. So
I know. Yeah. Well, here I am.
This is great.
and guys, this is the last meeting of this guest speaker meeting before Diversity Comic Con on October 16 and 17. So I would like to invite you all to come to. It's all online, and we have panels from DC, from Scholastic, from Macmillan, and from Random House. We have guest speakers and panelists, and Sean Martinborough is our keynote speaker, and we're going to try to get him to do a Q&A as well. We have Kicker Hughes, we have Mika Song, we have Christian Cooper, we have Aletha Martinez. We have a lot of.
Cooper's coming.
Yeah,
Good.
well, actually, I'm not supposed to let anybody know yet because it's not official yet, but he's coming. We have Gina Gagliano, Andrea Colvin. You know, we have a lot of Fabrice Sapolsky is coming back. Yeah, but if you go to the website diversitycomiccon.com, it doesn't matter where you are in the United States or in the world, you can attend because it's all virtual. And on Friday and Saturday nights, we're going to have speed networking. So you get to meet other creators as well. So it's not, that's the thing that I think has been missing from all these virtual cons, is you don't get to chat with people. You're always listening to a panel, or you're in the middle of a Zoom room and everybody's talking at the same time. So we're trying. I know Greg has tried this. We're doing a new service where it lets you speak to people one-on-one at random, and it matches you up with other people. So we're doing that Friday and Saturday night. But everything you can find on diversitycomiccon.com. You do have to register in order to get the links to all the events and all the panels and all the Q&As and the networking. Okay, so try to come and try to spread the word as well. And again, Janice, thank you so much. And I'm sure, and hopefully I can see you soon after all this has died down.
I know. See you on the other side of the pandemic, basically.
Janice lives just a few minutes from my in-laws, and so every once in a while I get to see her upstate. So
anyway, thank you everyone for.
Say hi to Danny for me.
Okay, take care. Good
Take care,
night.
guys.
Thank you, Janice. Take care, Janice.
Be safe. Bye.
All right, you too.
I'm sorry. When is the Diversity Con again?
October 16th.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See
Bye.
ya, everyone.
Yeah.